I'll be honest with you, I absolutely love that introduction. Hello and welcome to you all. Sorry if that was an echo there. I appreciate you joining me for this live chat. As usual, I don't think I'm ever on time, but happy Friday to you all. Again, thanks for logging in. As you can see, it's a little bit more casual for me. This is really a representation of what the Patreon supporters get as one of the perks on any level. It starts at $1 a month. Well, this month is really cool. Actually, all of the Patreon supporters almost unanimously voted to make all of this public this time around, just to share kind of the fun and join in on the conversation. There's going to be a toll-free line. I think everybody wants dialogue, and even though, again, I made it for a more personal, private, whatever you want to call it, for those supporters, they all wanted to include all of you. So for those who are not a Patreon supporter, thank you so much for just joining us and taking part into the conversation. Shortly, I will go ahead and post the toll-free call-in line. And also, let me get my phone here. I will also post a telephone line that you can text as well. So I am going to be fielding all sorts of questions. I've got a stack here of those that have been submitted. So obviously I will try and get to all of those. The chat I'm going to watch as best as I can. I believe, and correct me if you don't see it, there is a thing called a super chat. Anything that comes in during these chats goes right back into the Black Vault. So please know that it does, it goes to something good. All of these are in essence displayed with all of the donations that come in are obviously displayed in the progressions that you're seeing, the new features that are coming around on the Black Vault, one of which that I just played for you, which is the preview to ultimately an online series. I'll be honest with you, I've wanted to do this for years, and I haven't really been able to do it for financial reasons, a couple of bit of time and stuff like that. But now it's time. I have gotten to the point where I want to bring something to you all free. It's not a subscription service or anything like that. It's going to be available to everyone. But obviously, that's where the Patreon support comes in, is it paves the way for that. The same is true in chats like this. If you see a super chat, that's a way to get your question blasted onto the screen. And there's probably a surprise in there waiting for you, at least for the first one who does it. But that being said, that all goes to support what you just saw. If you can in the chat, tell me if you heard the music for that preview. If not, maybe you just saw a 45-second or so animation. That's okay too. But just know that on the channel that you're watching on, and make sure that you press that subscribe button. I think it's over here, maybe over there. Doesn't matter. Just go ahead and find that red subscribe button and help me out by subscribing to the channel, seeing when I'm live next. But as the post said on social media, with Twitter and Facebook as well, if you follow the Black Vault on that, really what I posted was, this is the beginning of a lot of short form and long form video formats that are coming onto this very channel that you're watching now, in essence to help educate the public. I, as those who follow me know, really try and stay grounded in truth. Even though we deal with government cover-ups and conspiracies and get into some wild and crazy things, obviously I try and stay grounded in truth, documents, evidence, and where I can branch out from that and bring even more to the table. Well, this is going to, in essence, bring the Black Vault alive. These videos are going to take those documents and build on it, not only just for the radio show, but now the video, you see the live streams already taking place, but on top of that, much more edited video pieces, again, in long and short form. So some will be 2, 3, 4 minutes in length, and you will also have those that may go an hour or 2 hours in full-blown documentaries. So I'm pretty absolutely excited about that. And it is those Patreon supporters that really have come aboard just the last 4 or 5 weeks, I think it's been. But those have come aboard. I hope you see the difference. You see what you guys are achieving with supporting the Black Vault, even for as low as $1 a month. Trust me, it all helps, and all of that goes right back into what you're seeing. So, again, if anybody who's listening in on that chat, if you could tell me if you heard that music, that'll be a big help for me. If you're listening on the recorded version, this obviously was a live stream. Make sure you subscribe and do that. And the podcast version as well, obviously just audio only, so you didn't see anything, but just know that you can watch this as well on the YouTube channel. So, that being said, before I open up the phone lines, I want to deal with a couple of questions that came in from the Patreon supporters. As you all know that are involved in that, I try and communicate with all of you. If you ever have any questions, feel free to post them on there. But this was an opportunity for you all to post questions to me on anything. Now, certain aspects of what I cover have been proven much, much more popular. In the grander scale, UFOs is obviously the number one. But also more specifically, the presentation that I did not too long ago on Mr. Luis Elizondo's emails and the documents that came forward about the 3 UFO videos. Now, I teased out, I don't tease a lot, but I did tease out this week about possible news coming. That is definitely coming. I wanted it by this live stream. Sadly, it just didn't happen, but that's okay. The news ultimately will either TTSA, I'll say it this way, either the TTSA is going to love it, to the Stars Academy is going to love it, or they're not going to like it at all. I just report to you what I get. So we will see, what comes about. We'll see what happens. I'm going to do a quick check on this live stream. We'll see how we are. Looks good, so we are good to go. So that news didn't come, sadly, today, but that's okay. It is set to come. I did speak with the Navy a couple times this week, and I am getting information that apparently no one else is asking about. And I'm really surprised about that because there are a lot of journalists out there. There are a lot of bloggers out there that are covering this. And it sounds like nobody really is pursuing the truth behind what is really going on. It's not to say the government is always 100% honest. I wrote a book about that, so I totally get it. So don't think that I'm just basing everything off of government statements and government documents. That's not how I work. Many people try and chastise me for it and make up the accusation, but I assure you that is definitely not the case. But it helps in the bigger picture. So when that news comes, I don't know what it is. I'm not hiding anything from you. I just didn't get it yet, but that's okay. So that's still in the works. It's a holiday week. I'm sure everybody's just kind of, dragging their feet. So that said, let me go ahead and get to a couple of questions on the Patreon support page here. And again, thank you to all of those who have signed up on the Patreon page. And these are the questions that were submitted this afternoon. So let me start from the top. Christopher Bales. I don't know if Christopher is in the room. I've been looking for your name, Christopher. If you are, shout out to you, Chris. I hope you're doing well. I pulled your question first because this is one that's personal to me, not necessarily for the content reasons, but the person you brought up. Christopher writes, Stanton Friedman swore to the end of his life that there was no evidence that the MJ-12 documents were fabricated. I believe him. What are your thoughts on the MJ-12 documents? It's a great question, Christopher. As many well know, Stanton and I were friends for more than 20 years. I had a lot of respect for him. I personally have not focused on the MJ-12 documents, even after 23 years of hearing about them, for a few different reasons. It's not that I doubt their legitimacy, but rather Stanton Friedman has done an amazing job trying to verify their authenticity. And yes, he was very, very convinced. Hi, Chris. I see you're there in the chat. He was very, very convinced. I would say that that's enough for me to trust that there's something to it. Would I swear by it? No. The problem with leaked documents is you're never going to verify them. I mean, ever. That's the issue. I mean, unless the government comes clean one day and says, yes, we have a top secret Majestic 12 organization, and they are in operation and ultimately hiding the UFO truth and shielding us from the realization that extraterrestrials are here. Unless that happens, we will just never know. So I felt strongly, simply because of not only the respect I had for Stanton, but the respect I had was well deserved. He had put in so much effort into tracking down every single name, everybody, his family. He would open the phone book. That's why I respected him, because he would do that. He would make phone calls. He wouldn't just do a Google search. We see that a lot this day and age, where people think they know what they're talking about, and the extent of their information comes from Googling. And Stanton was never like that. And so he really felt strongly they were real. And I felt he exhausted, after seeing many, many lectures with him and reading his books, he really exhausted every angle. Now, the other problem with information that is this extraordinary is the government will never come clean, number one. But number two, you generally won't find anything on an official level to verify it anyway. And so what you're left with, and this isn't a bad thing when it comes to a research angle, but what you're left with is doing exactly what Stanton did. And again, there's nothing that I feel that I could add to it unless something comes out from the government, which I highly doubt ever will. So if these things are legitimate, this is my long-winded way of dodging saying that, yes, they're real, because I really don't know. Honestly, I don't. I just have enough respect for Stanton and who he was as a researcher to think that there's something to it. But sadly, there's really ultimately no way we can find out. And I truly believe that. After decades of him doing it, I just don't see anything concrete coming out and supporting that MJ-12 was real. Do I have my doubts? I will say this, despite that respect I just talked about. Yeah, I do. They're a little bit too extraordinary for me. I think that there are some holes in the story. The muddying of the water, I feel anyway, even though I've known Dr. Robert Wood for many, many years, I think the muddying of the water came with the appearance of like hundreds of other MJ-12 documents, and that, I think, hurt more than helped, because I think that a lot of those documents do have tall tale signs of being fabricated. Not that Dr. Wood did it, but they do have signs of being fabricated, with a lot of potential truth sprinkled in, or vice versa. Lots of truth with fabrication sprinkled in, glass half full and half empty. So I know that I'm long-winded there, but it's ultimately impossible to figure it out, and it again plays into why I have talked bad about leaked documents a lot. Obviously, the Wilson memo is yet another leaked document that has come out that we will never be able to verify. And so I think that they're interesting. I think that we should keep them around. I don't think we should discount them, but in the same respect, we still need to push. Joy Maestas, I'm sorry, Joy, if I have your last name pronounced incorrectly. Hi, my question is, do you think the Space Force has to do with UFOs and deep space monitoring? Joy, that's definitely the going conspiracy behind the Space Force. Let me start by being a little bit skeptical on accepting the UFO connection off the bat. The reason is in addition to researching UFOs, obviously I have done a lot of research on documentation on all sorts of things, including national security and things that ultimately will harm the United States. I look at terrorism. I look at all sorts of documents. And one of the biggest concerns that we don't hear about every day, but here we are just about a week away from the anniversary of 9/11, is they believe that next 9/11, whatever that may be, will come from space or digitally or cyber. And with that, obviously with the satellites and this and that, you really have to protect those assets. We obviously have a lot of spy satellites. We have a lot of defense and military satellites up there. We even have space aircraft that we don't even know what it's doing up there. So one just set the record of like 700 plus days or something like that. So we need to protect that, because again, not dealing with the UFO issue, but dealing with the national security issue and dealing with national security, the threats with terrorism, this and that, from a non-UFO angle It's really important. So what Donald Trump is doing here is, I think, taking something that was already established, because the United States Air Force has had a space command for decades, taking something that's already established and kind of bumping it up a couple notches. And I think that that's very sorely needed. I think that we need to protect that space that surrounds us and ultimately control it. I mean, I hate to say that we should just be the dominator in space, but if we want to protect ourselves, that's what we have to do. Now let me deal with the UFO angle. One thing that I've learned in 23 years about secrecy is that if you hide it in plain sight, a lot more people will pay less attention. And what I mean by that is, if there is a UFO aspect or deep space monitoring angle to the Space Force or the Space Command, tell the public about it. Tell everybody what you're doing, and just be open with, we're defending against space threats. And I think it was Ted Cruz that said space pirates or something, and people made fun of him. But I mean, honestly, he's kind of right, because if one of these countries that has started to conquer space and launch satellites up and potentially manned flight, if they have bad intentions, they can start taking over our assets, very much like a pirate would in the middle of the ocean. Why they're vulnerable, meaning why pirates go out there and hit these vulnerable ships, is it'll take a long time for these protect, the military or anything to protect these assets to arrive. The same is true in space. So even though Cruz was a little bit silly by saying it and people made fun of him, he's absolutely right, because the minute we start having the ability to go out there and capture these assets and take over these satellites that give us life. I mean, it's insane how much we rely on these space assets. Perfect example is hold up your cell phone. And, we rely on so much that are connected to satellites into our cell phones. And that's just on the consumer level. And if we rely that much, imagine how much the military relies on that. So I think that it's definitely an important aspect to all of this. And the UFO angle could just be entwined in that. Hide it in plain sight. So do I think it is? Well, it could be. It could potentially become an aspect of it if it wasn't intended to be, meaning maybe this will give them the ability to start realizing, if they haven't already, that UFO phenomenon is a severe threat. This is where TTSA and I actually align, and To the Stars Academy and I align, where I do believe that there is a threat aspect to whatever this phenomena is. And as much as people think that I harp on them all the time, and this may not be popular with some in the chat room or that are listening in, but that threat aspect, which they are highly criticized for, I actually agree with them of all the things, because I think that threat is real, whatever that UFO phenomena is. So if they haven't realized it yet, meaning the U.S. military and the U.S. government, highly unlikely, but if they haven't realized it yet, maybe a stronger presence in space may allow them to figure it out. And again, even though that idea is chastised with being a threat, UFOs are threatening, I wouldn't say that is a definitive, but I would say that is a huge possibility, and that is something that we have to deal with. So if it's not intended to be entwined in the Space Force or Space Command, it may ultimately become a byproduct of it and be something that they look into. So I hope that answered your question there. Master ES, as I probably won't be able to attend live. So Master is one of our international Patreon supporters. So thank you to them. Obviously a nickname for supporting the Black Vault. As I probably won't be able to attend live, here is my question in advance. What do you think about the case of Marian Rudnick? Thanks a lot. So I'll be honest with you. I had to look this up. I wasn't sure who that was. This is a really interesting story that I'm ashamed to say I didn't know. They released Marian. He is a former astronaut who released a book a couple months ago, relatively new, and talks about his UFO sightings and how it potentially hurt his career. Now, I don't know a lot about his story yet, But I was so kind of interested and intrigued by this question, and then after looking into this Marion Rudnick, and I'm sorry if I have that pronounced wrong, but I reached out to Marion Rudnick and introduced myself, and would love to bring him on to share his story, because just by reading the synopsis of the book, it is something that you will all really, really enjoy. So I don't have a lot of information for you to answer your question, but I will say this was a very cool question to get, because even though I couldn't answer it, this is one that I hope is going to be a future guest. Didn't hear back yet, but that was just a few hours ago. But yeah, I'm excited to learn a little bit more about that case. Here's an anonymous question, also from a Patreon supporter, though. This is a really good question, actually. Is ufology drifting into pseudo-religion and cheap entertainment for the uneducable with the mainstream media now aboard, lashing these bogus stories along? So is this just turning into a pseudo-religion or cheap entertainment for the people who can't educate themselves? I'm going to be honest with you and say that problem in the field of ufology, Robert, I'm going to interrupt. You guys can probably all see our little friend who just appeared on screen. That is the funny surprise. And just for $1, Robert, thank you very, very much for supporting. Let's see who's coming on here. I don't know if these are brand new ones or if something's going on here with it. But the first one who made that little guy appear, and now we're getting more. So Robert, if you are still in the room for making that little guy appear first, you are going to get a free copy of the book, all for $1. So that was just kind of a surprise giveaway. So thank you for that. There's surprises all the time on these live streams. So Robert, I'm going to make sure that I don't forget, but I'll go ahead and get a book out for you for making our cool little guy appear on screen before anyone else did. So thanks for that. Looks like some of the Patreon subscribers are coming in. So that going back to the question about the mainstream media and cheap entertainment, people can't educate themselves. I'm going to be honest with you and say that's been a problem for a long time. I believe that. Give me 1 second here. I believe that I'm going to start with the media first, because this is, I believe that this is the biggest problem that the field of ufology has in this day and age. And I'm going to start with the media first. I've talked about it before, but I'll for the sake of this conversation and this live stream, I'll talk a little bit more about it. The media in this day and age, the print media is dead, right? We all know that. Nobody's going to argue that. It's just dead. What translates into dollars now is clicks. We all know that. That's verifiable. That's how these papers make their money. Obviously, online subscriptions as well. But with the internet, I think online subscriptions when it comes to major media outlets is just really silly, unless you just have to have access to the New York Times online or Washington Post, those that do have the subscriptions. If you're not one of those people and you're like me, you just get your news from like 12,000 other places. So those hits translate into dollars. That's how these companies stay alive. UFOs is proven to be one of the most popular topics ever. I mean, when they cover it, and even if it's why the British tabloids do it all the time, even if it's not New York Times or Politico breaking the ATIP story, UFOs get hits and clicks, and that translates into money. So you see these UFO stories that really just don't have a whole lot of meat to them. Obviously, the ATIP stories aside, because that actually had some verifiable meat into it. But a lot of them, they don't have much. And I kind of laugh, especially these local papers, where Tom Thumb on the corner with his cell phone shot a video of a blob, and it's like on their front page. But that in itself gets a lot of clicks to that small local paper. We see it on the bigger mainstream also, and we see it on the British tabloids. So I think that there's a lack of caring about the topic, because if they just report it and throw it out there, and hidden in paragraph 6 is it's probably just a bug or a moth. hidden there is the truth. But the headline, that flashy headline, that's what's getting the hits and clicks. So I think it's the embellishment of these stories or the lack of caring to really ultimately put the story to bed or try and research it, that is hurting the field. Because I'll give you a prime example, Drudge Report. If you guys watch Drudge Report, it's like the number one most coveted news page to be on. Not a news outlet per se, but rather someone who links over to news outlets. He runs the UFO stories. He must love UFOs. I've had the pleasure, because you get a ton of hits from it, of being on his number one spot now 2 or 3 times. And that's at the very top of drudgereport.com. When you're up there, it's pretty coveted, but UFO stories often appear towards the top. Why is that? Well, I think there's an interest for him, an interest with him into the topic. The problem, though, is, I mean, I would hope present company excluded, a lot of what he runs are the British tabloids and the kind of the crap in the field that does not deserve attention. The squirrel that's seen in a rock on Mars gets attention. A bug flying across the lens, verifiable that you can ultimately debunk it, is on the cover of Drudge. Like, these are all headlines that I've seen on the cover of Drudge. Now, I'm a fan of Drudge, but I don't understand the fascination. Those coveted spots are often landed by UFO stories, and those UFO stories are often, I would say, in excess of 95+%, if not more, bunk. You know, they are from Secure Team 10. Sorry, Tyler, but I got no respect for that channel. I know some people have tried to forgive him for hoaxing videos. No, I don't see it. The guy's making bucks because people want that eye candy. They don't care about the content. Secure Team 10 is one. What's another one? I forget what the other one was. But there's a couple of them that are just top of the list of don't go there, and they're the ones that you see in the media. That's a problem. And so I think that media is definitely a main contributor to the problem in ufology today. Cheap entertainment, I'll echo you there, and away from the mainstream media and more into the cable networks. I speak as someone who has, and yes, April, Secure Team 10 is garbage. I agree with you. The cable networks, I'll be broad here because I've worked for a long time as a freelance television producer, and I've worked for many of these networks. I don't feel that the shows that I've produced or written fit into this category, but sadly, a lot of the History channels, Discovery channels, National Geographic channels, TLCs, whatever the flavor of the month is, that you might be flipping through the channels, when they do a UFO show, it's the same cookie cutter mold of a team of people going out. They all have unique backgrounds. They're going to go out there and they're going to discover once and for all the truth behind UFOs. All right there on fill in the blank about the cable network. And that has to stop as well, because it has become cheap entertainment. It really has. UFO research is not exciting. I love it, but it ain't thrilling, that's for sure. And so to make a TV show about it, you only have 2 options. You do it realistically, and you show what it's really like to go to archives, to go out into the field, but you're not very often anyway, you're not collecting trace evidence samples. You do periodically, but you're waiting around for a while. So with television, you've got these schedules to adhere to. You've got deliverables that you have to make sure you hit the milestone. So you do it right, and you'll never have a season 2. Or you embellish, and you create that drama. We've seen that a lot. You know that if you watch any UFO program, you've seen a created narrative, not only in the UFO reality genre, but also in the nonfiction documentary format. I don't mean to pick on anybody, but when you look at some of the titles of, let's say, Ancient Aliens, it makes you scratch your head and go, come on, you really going to go down that route? And I don't mean to speak bad about that show, because I have friends that work on it. And again, I try and separate that professional hat that I have to wear as a producer and the UFO researcher hat, where I try and go, come on, guys, why are we doing that? but it's like 13, 14, 15 seasons, whatever number it is. That's an amazing feat to accomplish. But in order to do that, there's only so many real head scratchers when it comes to the ancient aliens thing that you can cover until you run out of ideas. Well, how are you going to get your next season? You know, and so I think that that's where the fabrication comes in. So ultimately, that the between the mainstream media and these cable networks, it's problematic. I'm going to try, like I said, watch that chat room. As you can, if I miss one of those super chats, I mean, I'm going to do my best to do all of this. If I miss something, please know that I will apologize immensely. But the super chats, I believe, are what comes onto the screen, but I could be wrong. All right. So mainstream media and then the uneducable, or the ones that don't want to educate themselves. This is another problem that I think that's not really a problem where I'm trying to pick on the public, but that's the third aspect to this question that I have to say. A lot of people, and it's not to their fault, they just don't have the time to look into this. So the media and those cable shows are all they have. And so it's like a circle, right? I talked about the media, clicks, money. Talked about the cable networks, obviously money with advertising as well. But then you've got that third aspect, the general public, which, again, I'm not going to fault all of them. They don't have time to do their own research, so that's where they get their information, and they continue to watch, and they continue to, click on those links, view those Secure Team 10 videos, and that's problematic because it just feeds the beast in this circular motion that all three work in tandem. They don't know it or plan it, but that's obviously what happens where, again, you have that media that needs the clicks. You've got the mainstream media as well that needs the clicks, the television shows that needs the viewers, and then the viewers that need the information. Truth be damned, let's just click on that link. Let's just tune in. So is that their fault, meaning the general public? For the most part, no. I mean, sadly, people just don't have the time. I don't really even have the time. I just love it. So that's why I put time into it and love doing stuff like this. But sadly, most people don't. So how do we get beyond that? I'm not really sure. That's going to feed into a different question later on. But how do we get beyond that? And I have no idea. I wish I did. I'm going to go ahead and put the. I still have questions to go through here, but I'm going to go ahead and put the toll-free line and the text number on the screen. Now, please know this is how the toll-free line works. If I'm ready for you, I'll just take the call outright. If not, I'm going to put you on hold. You're going to hear hold music, and then if you're backed up in the queue, it'll tell you how many people are ahead of you. Go ahead and just listen through the YouTube thing because you're going to hear music. I'm sorry, I can't feed a live feed into that hold, so it's just some music. I will be changing that music. I wish it was done by today, and it was not. So I'm sorry if it's a little bit too loud, but just know then when I'm ready, I'll go ahead and bring you on the air. But I will possibly have to put you on hold. You'll hear that music. Just go ahead and listen through onto the YouTube channel. The way that the text messages work, it's just that. Feel free to go ahead and text that number on the screen there. The telephone number 866-856-9722 or text. That's 661-888-2568. I'll try and get to everything. Calls obviously are the priority just because I don't want you guys to have to sit on too long. But I will get to some more questions while we wait for that. This particular one, I am Goddard, submitted, do you have reason to believe the government may have better UFO footage than TTSA has published? If yes, any idea why the premier ATIP evidence would be videos of UASs and balloons? Well, that is a loaded question. Do I believe that the government has UFO videos better than what we have seen? The answer would probably be yes. I say probably because I don't know for sure. But I would say it's safe to say that yes, I do believe that the government has probably captured something much more exciting than the FLIR footage. It is interesting. I am not trying to take away from the Nimitz or the gimbal videos. They are interesting. I just think that there's probably much more interesting things that the government has or the military has captured. The second part of your question, why would the ATIP evidence be labeled as UASs and balloons? This obviously is something I've focused a lot on. The reason is because I have zero idea on why they would label it UASs and balloons. And the reason is, if you haven't seen the presentation, admittedly, it is lengthy. The presentation I did, about an hour, 45 minutes or so, is the complete lineage and genealogy of those 3 UFO-related videos that we're referencing in this question, all the way up to the release of the Luis Elizondo emails, which confirm that drill home that not only did Mr. Luis Elizondo put on the form to get those videos reviewed, describe them as drones and balloons, but actually had a much lengthier explanation about drones and balloons and why those videos were going to be used for United States government use only to create a database. What Mr. Elizondo was pitching to get these videos reviewed and cleared for U.S. government use only is something that I would highly support. He was on the right track. I am surprised, if proven true, that the government does not have a database that catalogs drone encounters, incursions on military bases by unidentifieds, but most likely drones and other types of balloons, I think, are silly, but hey, he put it, I didn't. And so drones and balloons, that there's not a kind of a central database to figure out, hey, are there malicious attempts to surveil, let's say, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or attempts to continue to monitor with multiple drones at different times, Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, whatever it might be. I think that they should be watching that. I also showed some documents from the Department of the Navy that ultimately proved that the drone issue was a problem. And the reason is because it was a military base in San Diego. I'm trying to remember the document that I showed. That way it matches up if you guys have seen it or decide to watch it. But there were documents that were from the Navy, from specifically the NCIS, or the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. And they investigated a drone incursion on one of their military installations in San Diego. It was Earth-based. It was people that were flying a drone, but they didn't know what it was. And they had to investigate it, see if it was criminal, see if it was malicious. This specific one actually turned out that it was a mistake. The drone actually got away from the controller, ended up going into the military base, and so on. But obviously that was a big problem. Going back to what Mr. Elizondo wanted to do, that's why I would fully support him. These documents I got years ago, before Mr. Elizondo ever retired from the government, meaning that this has been a long-going issue, long-standing issue, and something that hasn't obviously been addressed. And so what he was trying to do was address it. All of that is a very noble thing to want to do. There's nothing wrong with that. Back to this question, though. Why was DOPSR, the organization that was responsible for the security reviews for these 3 videos, why was DOPSR told this completely different narrative than the general public? The general public, when we see these 3 videos that were reviewed, are told that they're UFOs or UAPs. They're unidentified craft. People have gone on the record. I think David Fravor said he felt strongly it was not of this world when talking about the FLIR 1 object, which that wasn't his video, but he felt it was the same object. Obviously, people are really going out on a limb on what these things are. The problem is behind the scenes. So the question mark for me is, who was being told a narrative that is not true? You can spin it however way you want to, but you can't have it both ways. You can't say that those 3 videos represent drones and balloons, right? Specifically drones and balloons, but then say that they're unidentified aerial phenomena that defy current technology. I just don't see both being possible. So the question mark is, who was spun a different narrative than what was true? The most likely scenario, in my opinion, if I can give it, is DOPSR, or that organization that manages the security reviews, was told the truth. That potentially this will turn out to be a drone of some kind. It's very interesting that texts are coming in. I'll get you. It's very interesting that these explanations very much coincide with Mick West's analysis of the videos. Now, you may or may not like Mick. I personally do. I think he does some great work. I don't agree with all of what he says or does or claims or tries to prove or disprove. But Mick is ultimately a debunker, tries to find logical explanations for things that seem extraordinary. And his explanations for these videos very much coincide. And he puts up a convincing argument, by the way. He didn't just look at the videos and go, they're balloons, they're drones. No, he like set up experiments and figured out the gimbal movement. And I mean, it's impressive. You may not like him, but take a moment and watch the video because it's very, very impressive. I've had him on this show as well. And he's a great guy to talk to. And again, he sets that bar to, if you're going to bring out evidence, he sets that bar that you got to meet his expectation, because if he can debunk it, it's not going to look good. It's not because Mick's opinion is the end all be all, but he puts up a convincing argument. So in order to counter that, you have to put up an even more convincing argument to say, look, Mick, what you say makes sense, but these are UFOs, UAPs, these are something else. When the evidence now comes out, more evidence, by the way, that says drones and balloons, that's a problem. You can hate me for saying it, but it coincides with the most logical, skeptical explanation that exists. The last thing I'll say to this, and then I'll read the text message. That's going to be a tough one. The sorry, I don't mean to laugh. The problem with doing this and ultimately proving that Mr. Elizondo was saying drones and balloons, the biggest argument that I've heard from his supporters is that he withheld that information from Dopser. And then I was shocked to see that Mr. Elizondo himself said that those that needed to know were made aware of the situation on what those videos were. That, to me, I think he did not do himself justice by explaining that what we are seeing as the public watered down version, and then behind the scenes, those that have top secret clearances, they were all made aware of it. That's not how Dopser operates, and anyone can verify this. You do not have to have a security clearance to know this. And the reason is what happens is that Dopser is cleared at the highest level. You do not withhold information from that officer. Some have argued, well, they didn't want to put it in an email. That's silly, because even though the Freedom of Information Act exists, there are 9 Freedom of Information Act exemptions that protect people like Mr. Elizondo and Dopser and the CIA and the FBI, that they can talk about classified information and write it down. Because if it fits properly into one of the 9 exemptions, the general public is not going to see it. Now, unless you're super shady like some politicians and they don't want to write things down, all right, we can have a different conversation there. But when it talks about military intelligence and so on and so forth, that is not how it works. Those protections are there in order for everyone to ensure that they can do their job right. Because if you start just fearing about writing things down, imagine how chaotic the intelligence community would be. Imagine how chaotic the military complex would be, right? That they just can't write anything down because if somebody files a FOIA and Greenewald comes along, he'll get these documents. That's not how it works. That's why those 9 exemptions are there, and that's why those safeguards are in place. So going back to the skeptical argument, oh, well, he just hid it from them. That doesn't fly. It just doesn't. I'd love to see Dopser's reaction if they were to learn that that's how it went down. I don't know what would happen. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, there'd be an investigation and he would be taken away in cuffs. I don't know. I honestly don't. My logical opinion would be, yes, they're going to look into it, unless he was honest with Dopser. In my opinion, First Amendment's going to cover you coming out and spinning a different narrative, as long as he's not acting as a spokesperson for the DOD, right? That actually is part of having an issue, is if you start coming out and acting like a spokesperson. So as long as he's not doing that and just offering information, if there's a lawyer out there, you guys would probably know better than I would, but my guess is First Amendment rights going to secure you in that. So people have said, well, why aren't they coming after him? That's the most logical reason for me. Why would he spin the narrative to the public different than what he would Dopser? I don't know. I will tell you guys the same thing that I told Mr. Elizondo in a letter that I wrote him. And that was, I really wish he came out with his story and he was not attached to a corporation trying to raise $50 million. Plain and simple. Again, people will not agree fully with me on that, but that's what I told him, and that's what I will tell all of you. If he stood alone with his story, I would be much more eager to understand why he's doing what he's doing. But sadly, when you attach yourselves to a corporation that is trying to raise $50 million, and again, this is obviously time-stamping it back to when TTSA first came out and fundraised on their first capital run. Now they're in their second. I haven't seen any headlines that it's ended. I even don't know when it's going to end, but obviously they're in their second round. When he's attached to that, you have to look at potential motives to embellish a story. Not a popular thing. It really isn't. But sadly, that is what we have to look at. It may ultimately be that this group of TTSA individuals are the most honest and wholesome, and they want to change humanity for the better. Maybe that's true. I haven't seen it yet, but maybe that's true. I smile because I think it's silly. I think we have to look at the root of what's going on here. And I mean, I can bore you guys to death for hours, but you have to look at the timeline then of when Mr. Elizondo requested the videos to be released. You have to look at when the coverage came about. I find it fascinating that I think the official word from To the Stars Academy is that there were no connections between them and the New York Times and Politico article, that it just was like a major coincidence. And yet 2 of those videos that were published in the New York Times were uploaded to TTSA's channel on YouTube the exact same day. What are the odds? And by the way, TTSA's are completely edited, and I want to address this too. Let me say this. They were produced. They were edited in the sense that they took an original video and then put their corporate logo on it and put graphics and on-screen text and stuff like that. That's what I mean by edited. I do want to explain one thing, and I'll get to these texts, I promise. And I got more questions to go to. And please, if the phone's not working, I'm really surprised, because that first live stream I did, I mean, the phone wouldn't stop. I couldn't get anywhere else. So if they're not working, please let me know in the chat room, because I have been trying to make some changes on it. So it's very well possible it doesn't work. But the texting works, so you can go ahead and text if you'd like as well. But the one thing that I wanted to talk about is, for those of you who saw the presentation and I talked about the videos being edited, let me explain edited, what I mean by edited. I was not implying that those videos were digitally altered and those UFOs were faked. That has been an online rumor that's been spread about me. I've never claimed that, ever. The only thing that I have questioned was the audio. Was the audio dubbed in? That was something I had questioned a year and a half ago. I'll be honest with you, I still do. I still believe that there are reasons to believe that the audio may be doctored. It doesn't change the digital, but what I meant in that presentation was that I did not believe that they put any CGI or anything by edited. My entire intent with pointing out that the official forms mentioned a certain format of video called MPEG, and then the actual submitted videos via email, which, you know, is a little bit odd, just simply because videos in their raw format are generally big. Maybe these videos not so much. They're lower resolution, and that's fine. But regardless, they were different video formats, which means that you take the original, convert it, and put it to something else. That doesn't mean that they digitally altered the imagery, but that means that it wasn't the original. Now, normally I wouldn't care about that, but keep in mind that TTSA was claiming that they had the absolute original version of the videos, and they had the chain of custody documentation to prove it. That obviously is proven untrue. Now, again, I'm not saying that they doctored the videos, but I think that there's an embellishment to make it look much better. Keep in mind that claim came well before the paperwork surfaced. Not only officially, but even the leak that was leaked by George Knapp. So when you don't have that evidence that the public can see, you can embellish that story a little bit without repercussion. However, when that evidence came out and presented itself, now we need to ask that question. Now they can't claim it's original. Not doctored, just not original. And that's where I think that embellishment, those red flags with embellishing a story, the signs are there. Sometimes it's very small and minuscule. I'm not saying those videos being in a different format is that big of a deal. I'm just saying we have to note it because it ties into a bigger claim of what they had. And now we know it's not true. That's the problem with the story. Those little things that you can put together, they absolutely match up. Text messages. I promised I'd get to you. Hello, Mr. Greenewald. Who are your favorite / most credible UFO researchers today? And what is your favorite UFO-related subreddit? You must be a Redditor. You want me to vouch for one of the forums. All right, calls are working, so I'm going to have to put you on hold there, so sit tight for me for a second. I trust no one. I don't even trust myself. The reason is because I continually get let down by certain things that have been said, certain things that have been done, certain things that have been covered, this, that, and the other thing. I've talked about him in the very beginning. If you saw it, Stanton Friedman, top of my list. I don't always agree with what he had come out with or the conclusions that he drew. He knew that. I knew that. It wasn't a big deal. I respected his approach, that boots on the ground, literal go to the archives, dig through that stuff. I miss that man. I really do. I talked to him very shortly before he had passed away. And when you speak to him, I mean, I think we talked for about an hour or so. When you speak to him, you realize that he just hammered every little detail. And that's where I learned 23 years ago when I first met him, when I first started in this journey, that those little details matter. And they may not matter to some out there, as evidence on any social media battle that I've been in. Not everyone cares about the little stuff. They care about, the big picture. I think what they don't realize, though, is that big picture is made up of the little stuff. And so that's why you have to focus on it, because you could build the most amazing house of cards that you can ever imagine. And that's your big picture. But if your foundation is rocky, slanted, wrong, it's going to crumble, and it'll crumble fast. And so that's why, for me, as a researcher, you build from the bottom up. And those little details are what's matter to, and that's what matters to anything. I'm not just saying about TTSA or UFOs or whatever. I'm saying about everything that's out there. Yes, that's right, News Lab. I don't even trust myself. I'll say it again. Everything matters when it comes to the little stuff, because that allows you to build a foundation up to the big stuff. Let me comment on that. I don't even trust myself. I always challenge whether or not I'm being biased. Always. I will always question whether or not I'm looking at something the right or wrong way. And so you start asking different questions. You have to challenge yourself. And what I've come up with is I aim, this is an honest answer. I feel strongly that I aim for the truth no matter what it is. I don't ultimately care on what the truth is, but I want to find it. Meaning I don't have a preconceived notion on whether or not ATIP was X, Y, or Z, or Mr. Elizondo is X, Y, or Z, or Tom DeLonge and TTSA are X, Y, and Z. I really don't. But I will push and push and push to whatever the truth is. And when those red flags come up, we got to look at them. If the red flags are settled with an easy answer, fantastic. And we move on. But that's what we have to do, is we have to hammer those little details. Back to this question, who else? You've seen him on this show. Tim McMillan is someone I really respect and admire. He goes after evidence. He is a former police officer. His background obviously plays a role in how he researches today. But I have a lot of respect for him as an investigator, as a researcher. You're now seeing articles in multiple media outlets from retired police lieutenant Tim McMillan. he's somebody that I absolutely respect. So the list is very few. It really is for me. And that's not to be insulting towards anybody that's out there, people that I've been friends with for decades, because again, I bring back the fact that I've always challenged myself. But I think we all need to do that. We all need to challenge what we believe, because I think that bias exists within all of us. However, in the pursuit of the truth, we need to make sure that we are not afraid to flip things on ourselves and ask ourselves different questions in different ways. And if we come up with the same conclusion, you're on the right track. If we start to challenge, though, and we start thinking differently, then we realize that our thoughts are not as strong as that you originally thought, and that's okay too. And that's what it's like for me being a researcher. I'll give you a prime example that's a little bit time-worthy. 9/11. 9/11 was something that I felt there's got to be evidence of an inside job. There's got to be this, that. And I spent years looking for it. And this may not be popular again for some, but I don't believe in the inside job theory. It was something that I set out to challenge, set out to try and figure out and understand. I thought I understood it. And then a lot of the evidence came about, and I made a conclusion for myself that the inside job thing was not logical, that the evidence was not there. I do believe that there was a cover-up. I'll say this quickly, and then I've got a phone call. I'll say this quickly, though. Just because I don't believe in the inside job thing doesn't mean that I don't believe that there's a cover-up behind 9/11. In short, I believe that the cover-up, and I've said this for many, many, many years, but people usually tune out if they believe in the inside job thing, and then I say, no, I don't believe in that, but they tune out right before I say but, and then they go, aha, Greenewald's a shill. No, the cover-up, in my opinion, but I don't have the evidence to prove it, but in my opinion, is we shot down United 93. That's what I think the cover-up is. And I was surprised to see that in George Bush's book, when he released his book a few years ago, admitted he gave the order. That's actually documented. I was curious if that was classified. So that was interesting. But then on top of that, very recently, like in the last couple of days, another book is coming out that is actually shedding light on the idea that they were going to shoot that plane down. The idea was they didn't have anybody to shoot it down. We didn't have planes close enough. I just don't buy that. But regardless, that's the official line. So that's the cover-up in a nutshell. But again, that's a personal opinion, not one I have evidence on. So let me get to the call. I'm sorry that I kept you on hold there so long. Welcome to the Black Vault Live. Who's this?
Hey, this is Christopher Bales.
Hello,
again.
Christopher Bales. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm going to try and turn your volume up and make sure everybody can hear you okay. What's up? I read your question.
Yeah. I have a question since we were talking about the videos, and I wanted to know if you were aware of the fact that the FLIR 1 video was actually leaked a long time ago, I think 2007, and if you're aware of it and if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, it's a great fact. I'm glad you brought it up, Chris. I was aware that it was leaked onto the internet in 2007. I didn't deal with it in the presentation just simply because there's not much that you can glean from the leak other than you can on Internet Archive see that it was online and see that it's been around for quite some time. Thank you, XCOM, by the way, for that. I really, really do appreciate it. I didn't deal with it simply because we can't figure out why it was leaked. I know that Above Top Secret, that big website on the internet, was a big message forum, I should say, has talked a lot about it, and maybe they did find some more origin behind the leak and where it was. So I won't lie and say that that's the final answer. You can't figure it out, because maybe someone on there did. I've just never focused on it, and the reason is I'm looking at kind of the bigger picture about the 3 videos. I've never, although I think it's an important case, I've never focused directly on the Nimitz encounter. So I really haven't spent, admittedly, a lot of time into confirming it or what. I know that quite a few researchers are, and so I've kind of stood back from dealing with that case specifically. But I'm definitely intrigued. I'd love to know who put it out there, because obviously you can't just take a video and throw it out on the net. I mean, you can without certain repercussions. So the question mark is, who did it and why. And then, again, that kind of plays into the red flags about TTSA's claim they were the first ones to bring it out. But that's nitpicking. I mean, a leak is a leak. So I know that didn't answer your question other than, yeah, I'm aware of it. Do you, by any chance, have any more info on it?
Well, no, I just found that it was interesting. I'd seen the video before they released it and was confused that the media did not really say anything about it being a known film, and I'd wondered if you just had any comments on it.
That the media, and I'm sorry, it kind of broke up there. The media was not aware of what?
Well, I had seen the video before, and I knew about it, so I was confused as to why the media didn't publish any information about it. Maybe they just didn't know.
I think that plays into the whole, like, the media just doesn't care kind of thing to really dig deep. Because, like, when you look at some of the media stories, and this is true with not TJ, I'll definitely get to text, don't worry. When media deals with issues like this, they very much look at the surface, and they look at the very bare minimum to make a story. And when you look at the New York Times and Politico articles that broke the ATIP story, you can see that a lot of the, in my opinion, a lot of the details were not pushed and hammered the way that an investigative journalist should. With Brian Bender as the exception, the details about Mr. Luis Elizondo's background working on ATIP, I believe, were never pushed. They just took his stance and said, okay, he definitely did this. Obviously, we know now that the Pentagon is issuing statements against that. So the question mark is, well, what happened? Brian Bender claims that the spokesperson at the Pentagon gave him that statement. But there's no statement. There's no quote. There's no confirmation. It was on telephone, apparently. And he's the only one that can verify it out of the hundreds of journalists. My whole point with that is I think that the journalists did not take their time to push as hard as they should have. They saw a good story. I'll admit, it's a cool story. It's awesome. However, I think that there were definitely some things that they missed that they should have hammered a little bit more on. I will defend them and say... Yeah.
I was going to say, along those lines, and I don't mean to hold up the line, but I do want to ask you... It seems like to me that when any one of the major outlets runs with a story, for example, Politico ran with two major stories about UFOs, and it seemed like once one major publication runs with it, everyone just follows along. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, I call it copy and paste journalism. So yeah, I mean, and when you look at the outlets that just using the Politico as an example. Using the outlets that said Dana White, who's the spokesperson for the Pentagon, confirmed Luis Elizondo's involvement in ATIP, they all reference Politico. So you have kind of the root of the story, and then you have like hundreds that just follow, and then they say, well, according to Politico, or according to New York Times, we saw that also with the UFO guidelines story, that a lot of people didn't do original research on that. They took Brian Bender's article and then wrote their own, according to Politico.
Yeah, but they all got the FOIA request. They all received the same FOIA request. It's not like it's unique. They all asked the same question after it came out, and they all got the same thing. And yet, as you pointed out, the answer is quite different than what we were at least made to believe.
Oh, you're talking about the UFO guidelines and how it never said UFOs
in general,
like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So, okay, yeah, I got you. So what Chris is talking about, for those who aren't aware, is I was able to get from the Freedom of Information Act, or via the Freedom of Information Act, emails between not only Brian Bender of Politico, but also quite a few other outlets that talked about the UFO guidelines, that were touted as the UFO guidelines. The actual banter between the government officers and personnel that were involved in issuing the statements, and then you can see the emails and the official statements, they really don't align with what we were led to believe the UFO guidelines are. Part of it may be a little bit semantics, but what's really interesting, the biggest find out of all of that, was the root of the official statement of the Navy. And this was, from what I understand, the highest ranking guy in the Navy. And what he had said was almost identical. I mean, I'm not going to say it's verbatim, but almost identical to what Mr. Luis Elizondo was saying with drones and balloons, and how they are a threat, and how we need to in essence, take in the reports to understand these drone incursions and so on and so forth. It was a very interesting correlation between a 2017 email by Mr. Luis Elizondo, which obviously is highly controversial right now, and then these 2019 emails when the UFO guidelines broke. So just some background for those listening who aren't aware with what Chris and I are talking about. But Chris, back to you. Yeah, I'm amazed at seeing the behind the scenes. And again, that's where I go back to where the media plays a role in this, these embellished headlines that are taking something that may not necessarily be as interesting as it seems, but making it much more interesting. And in the long run, in my opinion, that's where things start to fall apart. And sadly, the field will suffer in the long run because you realize that the media wasn't touting the right story, that they were embellishing, that maybe TTSA has been embellishing and we didn't get the right story. You look at the History Channel shows and Discovery Channel shows that are coming out, and we're not getting the right story. So I think that in the long run, that's definitely going to hurt us.
When I read the statement I read the entire email chain, I didn't see a thing in there that related to UFOs. And as far as I'm concerned, if there's going to be official statements from either the Pentagon or from anybody, they're going to know the difference between a UAS and a UAP, or a UAV and a UFO. Yeah. They know the difference. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
So I would think that this would be a clear statement to delineate those two very different objects.
Yeah, you're absolutely
Would you agree with that?
No, absolutely. And you're absolutely right that there was nothing about UFOs in there. In fairness, when the official statement was finally given to Politico, they did say unidentified aircraft. So, I mean, that's your creative
that means
license.
Nothing.
No, it doesn't. And I'm with you there. I'm just trying to be fair to Brian Bender, who doesn't like me. So maybe I shouldn't even try to be fair. But to be fair to the journalists who covered it, maybe since they said unidentified aircraft, that UFO is the same thing to him, that's fine. But I mean, yeah, I think the root of this is that the story was embellished. I am working on getting copies of the guidelines. I was denied. They are considered classified. However, I have appealed. My appeal is still open. I feel I put up a strong appeal, but we'll see. I mean, I've been denied before, so we'll see how that appeal comes out. And also working a couple other angles to try and figure out what exactly is going on. But that being said, I would definitely invite you all to do what Chris did and look at those emails and decide for yourself. Take that Politico article and then again the hundreds that followed and copy and paste journalism and see if we're getting told the whole story. So, yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate your call, man. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Absolutely. All right, so here's some text messages. This is Tim from the chat. Hi, Tim from the chat. I'm probably missing all sorts of stuff on there. Tim, you were the one that got the great book and the coin on the first live stream. So, Tim, you are evidence that I do have these surprises from time to time. My question is, have you seen the unidentified like UFO show on Discovery Channel called Contact yet? If so, thoughts? I'll be honest with you, no, I have not. So I won't give you a long-winded answer. I don't have anything to add. I've heard mixed reviews. For me, it's that cookie-cutter mold that, no disrespect to those involved in it, it just gets really boring for me to just see the same thing over and over. Because let's face it, if they do find something, it's not going to be, no offense to my friends at Discovery, but it's not going to be on Discovery. I mean, if they find something earth-shattering, we're going to see it on mainstream media, because obviously that's breaking news. I think that we see a lot of embellished entertainment with shows like that, so I sadly don't go out of my way to watch it. Here's a question. Why are MUFON and certain high-profile ufologists in TTSA's back pocket? That would definitely be a question for MUFON or the high-profile ufologists rather than me. I'll be honest, though, and echo the concern about that, because I won't name names, but there are people that I've respected in the past, even those that were friends of mine in the past that are no longer, simply because of my stance on this whole thing. That's not by my doing, by the way. I have no problem with people disagreeing with me. It's why I'm not afraid to have text lines and toll-free call lines. Anybody can call in. So I'm not afraid of that. Sadly, others are. And there's very much this mentality that we have to back them. We have to believe everything they say. If we don't, it's problematic. There's an issue. I got to plug in my phone or it's going to die. You know, that's something that we have to get out of. If we're true researchers and investigators, we challenge everything, plain and simple. Because someone told me, I think it was even on Reddit before, and I forgot to answer that part of your question before. Whoever sent that in about favorite Reddit, sorry about that. But that's what we have to do as researchers and investigators. We have to challenge everything, every little aspect. It's the only way we're going to move forward. Somebody told me on Reddit, in one of those subreddits, the truth will survive scrutiny. The most intense scrutiny you can throw at it, the truth will survive. Everything else falls to the wayside. That has stuck with me for a while, because I realized this is something that we have to do. There's a quote by Mr. Elizondo himself. He said it to Open Minds back in like the beginning of 2018. It was an Open Minds interview. And I'm paraphrasing here, but he ultimately said, you know, question everything, even myself, information that comes even from myself. We're doing, or I'm doing anyway, exactly what he recommended we do. So his biggest fans should have no problem with people like me. Even if you hate me, you shouldn't have an issue with it, simply because if it's the truth, it will survive whatever little old me can throw at it. And that's what we have to realize. And that if by any chance that Redditor is in the room, that your statement stuck with me for a long time, that truth will survive scrutiny. And that has stuck with me, and that's absolutely true. We shouldn't be afraid. This was actually, ironically, going back to the person who talked about the subreddit, Red Panda Koala. I don't have an answer for you on my favorite subreddit, so I'm not really sure. I was profiled on one of the top comments on Ask Reddit. I think it was Ask Reddit, which brought, almost 100,000 people. My daily average is about 20,000 people. That day it was about 100,000. So they sent about 75 to 80,000 people my way in one single day. So right now it's probably Ask Reddit, and anybody who posts the Black Vault on there, thumbs up to whoever did that. Last question for me today. What do you consider the best evidence that the UFO phenomena is real? Documents, events, people. What do you show people who haven't looked into this subject and think it's fake? I'm going to be honest with you. I am a government document guy. That is what I love. I know that some people say you can't believe everything the government says. You're absolutely right. What I find fascinating is the evidence that, number one, there's an active UFO cover-up. I believe strongly that I can prove it with their own documentation. Not leaked, not anybody who's come out as a whistleblower, but rather with their own documentation. So I believe that there's a cover-up. Number two is I also feel strongly that this phenomena exhibits something that just defies explanation. That when you start looking at the actual evidence and then you challenge yourself. This is where I say challenge myself. Anybody who read my book, shameless plug, which is right there, the last chapter, it's a step process for me. So if you want to prove the alien theory, you got to try and disprove it. And so you try and disprove it by taking skeptical explanations. And what I did in the last chapter was take all of those logical, skeptical explanations, and by the own evidence that the government gave me, you can prove it's not true. And when you look at that and you realize that there is nothing else that makes sense, that you start leaning towards, I'm not saying it's definite, but I'm saying you start leaning towards the only left explanation, which is the extraterrestrial hypothesis, that they are connected somehow to this. That to me convinced me that there's a lot here. So for personal reasons, I go to the government documents, because those same people that say the government lies to you all the time, well, look at the extraordinary evidence that they did not cover up. The 1976 Iran incident, top secret documents that have been declassified that exhibit technology decades in advance decades in advance. It's so advanced we don't even have it today. Those are documents you can read, right? So they tell you that. They may have hit it 5 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, but they are now giving it out. Add on the top secret documents that are still classified that they won't give you. That is even more proof that if you can read this stuff, that stuff that maybe was classified for many, many years, but it shows technology that we do not have from years ago, prior to drones and all this stuff that really kind of took hold, where you can find those logical explanations. You look at that and you realize, wow, this is really mind-blowing, and you can read it. That is the mind-blowing part. Because then you take all that top secret stuff that deals with UFOs. We know it because it's responsive to a request about UFOs. So whatever it is, it's UFOs. It's still considered top secret. So you start ruling out all those explanations, ET stuff is what you're left with. So again, I would never bet money at this point. I've never seen a alien. I've never had an encounter other than that skull back there. But other than that, I mean, I've never had that experience. So I don't know. But I can say the evidence, in my opinion, is overwhelming that it needs a closer look. I had a July 5th, 2019 sighting over West Seattle involving a UFO interacting with a tic-tac-shaped aircraft. I reported it to MUFON, complete with over a dozen high-resolution photos. My case has been scrutinized over and over, and my background cleared by the MUFON investigators at great length, and the case has just sat there. Do you feel MUFON is the best resource for research, or do you think it should be handled by the military? Well, definitely not by the military, in my opinion, because if that cover-up is real, and the evidence that I've determined, for myself anyway, does prove a cover-up, military is probably the last person or entity that you want dealing with this. MUFON, I have no bad blood with MUFON. However, I trust no one. However, I will amend my earlier statement on this particular answer simply because I will be more than happy, if you want them published, to take a look at the photos and publish them. I have a team of investigators, a small team of very smart people that look at evidence and try and challenge what it may or may not be. The group is called TBV Investigations, and if you are interested, if you go to theblackvault.com, go to the case files section, and there's a place to report UFOs. You can also just send an email to reportaufo@theblackvault.com. If you want it shared, I created a resource that allows anyone to share that information. If you want it investigated, I've brought together this team to do just that. So I won't speak ill about MUFON, but I will vouch for the team that's assembled, and I love looking at it too. We've got some pretty cool cases already, a lot of which we've been able to solve, and quite a few that we haven't. One even went viral, was posted by the hacker group Anonymous to over 10 million followers because of the quality of the video footage that came in. This was a fleet, what they call a fleet of UFOs that went across the surface of the moon. It's really interesting. I mean, there's Mick West chimed in, said it was, I think he said balloons, and there's other logical explanations. So it's unidentified. We don't know if it's alien craft or whatever, but it was very, very interesting, convincing enough that some very major players had forwarded it out on social media, and it got quite a bit of attention. So make sure, and that goes to anybody, if you want to submit your stuff, feel free to do so. There's quite a few text messages here. I'm going to get to as many as I can. I'll stay over at from the 5 o'clock, just so you guys know. You may meet my son, who loves to come in here. He's not home yet, but when mommy goes to pick up my 5-year-old son and 10-month-old daughter, my guess is he's going to come running in here and not care that I'm doing this, although my wife probably will warn him, but he'll come in anyway. So maybe I'll introduce you guys. So many credible people over the years like Bigelow, but no tangible evidence. Why can't there be a sharp, high-res photo or video in color close up of an alien saucer or alien being? Yeah, I agree with you there. I really wish there was. Arguably, there is stuff out there, but whatever does come in is highly controversial. So in this day and age with cell phones and everything, you'd think that there'd be a little bit more evidence. But in the same respect, there is a lot of evidence out there. Sadly, though, it's just not what we need to really put a definitive label on what's going on. So I'm with you there. Wish there was something much, much cooler. John, what's your opinion on David Adair? He's saying some wild statement. 1% are coming up to him to run a space agency's. I'm not sure just by the way that this is worded exactly what you are asking, but I don't know a whole lot about David Adair. So I am familiar, obviously, a little bit with background, stuff like that, but I don't have an opinion on him. There's a question in here about MJ12. I dealt with that quite a bit towards the beginning of the stream. So when you get an opportunity, go ahead and rewind it and go back towards the beginning. I did deal with it in short. I personally have stayed away from it. I feel people like Stanton Friedman, who devoted many, many, many years and did an amazing job digging in. I think he has a lot to show to support the authenticity. I personally have my reservations. But on top of that, I think that you should definitely more rely on his information. He's someone I miss dearly in this field after he passed away, but I think his information will live on for quite some time. So I just got a picture. Very cool. Okay. Since I don't have your permission to show this, and it's on my phone, so it probably won't translate right. If you do want to share this photo, feel free to let me know. I'm guessing this is the same person as before, but I can't tell because there are tons of phone numbers on here. So tell you what, for those who want to share those UFO sightings, because this may even be two different people, that photo is very, very cool. So if you want that shared, please let me know, and you can go ahead and submit it online, or again, email it reportaufo@theblackvault.com. Now, I know that there are quite a few other questions here, one of which I wanted to hit back to this sheet. I didn't get to everything, but I want to make sure that I get to a couple more, and then we'll see how far we go here. So this one came in from Twitter, Tom Whitmore. He is actually connected to MUFON. Don't know Tom. If you're in the room, feel free to shout yourself out in the chat room. So Tom Whitmore asks, are you filing FOIA requests on BAASS activities per Jack Brewer mention on Twitter of, quote, a paper trail of calls for proposals, budgets, progress reports, final report objectives, and deliverables, etc. Jack Brewer is an investigator. He has a blog. He's someone that I would respect, and I would recommend that you guys check out his writing as well. He seems very much like a healthy skeptic. So that's why I've always appreciated Jack's work. Tom, to your question, have I filed FOIA requests on BAASS activities? Absolutely. Here is the biggest hindrance on the investigation connected to BAASS and ATIP. Now, to preface this, because I know not everybody's following every aspect of this, BAASS is a subsidiary of Bigelow Aerospace. We know that. BAASS was the only bidder on a contract, a bid solicitation that was posted publicly on the internet. This was called OSAP, not ATIP, but OSAP. BAASS was the only bidder. I have that in writing. That had never been released before. The Defense Intelligence Agency told me that in writing. I had confirmed just to make sure I didn't misunderstand them, and they said that they were the only bidder. That's a big part of this story that I think is largely overlooked. I'll deal with that if you guys want me to. Feel free to post it in the chat if you want me to talk about why being a sole bidder is important. We know, however, they won the contract. They're the only bidder. We know that if the reporting is true by the New York Times, they got $22 million. Here's the problem, and that is the Defense Intelligence Agency itself. Now, the DIA has a massive Freedom of Information Act request backlog. And when I say massive, it's like a 6-year backlog. Sadly, that is the agency that you're going to get all of the documents on OSAP. Now, that's important because that is what BAASS bidded on and ultimately won. Here's one of the many red flags, if you guys are not aware. What is OSAP compared to ATIP? Now, there's a lot of spin out there. One blogger in particular wants to tell you that OSAP was a paranormal investigation program. ATIP focused in on UFOs. That, by the evidence, can't be farther from the truth. OSAP was a look at technology and aerospace threats forward-looking through about 40 years. Now, BAASS was supposed to look at what kind of technology we can have 40 years from now, and essentially what we can do to combat it, so on and so forth. What's kind of a gray area, right? There's nothing paranormal about that. What's kind of the gray area is whether or not ATIP was OSAP or it was something else. Now, here's a red flag for you. Dr. Hal Puthoff, who is not disputed to have worked on the OSAP contract through Bigelow, I really appreciate that, XCOM. Thank you so much for that support. I really, really do. If you got a question, please, by all means, post it. I'll make sure I get it to you. Going back to OSAP, the question mark here is, was it connected to ATIP? So Dr. Hal Puthoff, who is part of OSAP, not disputed, working through BAASS, he says that ATIP was just a nickname for OSAP. That's believable. They're the same program. Maybe OSAP had some UFO aspects to it, but ATIP was a nickname. That was said in a presentation by Dr. Hal Puthoff in Las Vegas. That's irrefutable. Anybody can look that up. But he specifically said and made reference to FOIA requesters, didn't say me, but I was the one that was known at the time for saying that the DoD gave a no records response when asking for records on ATIP. However, add in what Mr. Elizondo said OSAP was. In fact, he never really talked about OSAP until it kind of leaked on the internet. I don't remember exactly who. I believe it was Keith Basterfield who originally found it, possibly Paul Dean. My apologies to both if I have that wrong. I think they work as a team as well. So I don't know who exactly the root of figuring out what OSAP was. But regardless, Mr. Elizondo had never brought that up, and he was questioned by it at a MUFON presentation. Mr. Elizondo's words, excuse me, Mr. Elizondo's words were he had never brought OSAP up simply because he never took part in it. His part was being the director of ATIP. ATIP was not OSAP. He went to great lengths in this. You can listen to it yourself. I have the transcripts on what I call the ATIP timeline, but then also you can download the video presentation of Mr. Elizondo as well. He went out of his way to say ATIP was a completely different program than OSAP. Now, why is this important? Well, Dr. Hal Puthoff is on the board. In fact, he's a co-founder of To the Stars Academy. He works directly with Mr. Elizondo. Yet they have two wildly different interpretations of what OSAP/ATIP really were or was. So why is that? And I've asked that for a long time. Add in now that the Pentagon is saying, no, Mr. Elizondo didn't have any responsibilities on ATIP. That actually explains that discrepancy. Doesn't make me popular for saying it, but it's still a discrepancy because you can't have both people being right. So one of them is wrong, Dr. Hal Puthoff or Mr. Luis Elizondo. Not because I want to be a meanie guy and say, they're all wrong, but it's because you can't have it both the same way. So which one was it? And the answer is we just don't know. Tom, back to your question now that I've kind of prefaced that, is all of that contractual information between BAASS and DIA, because the DIA awarded the contract, may ultimately take up to 6+ years to get out from the government. That's what's frustrating about researching the origins of what ATIP was, or if it is OSAP, researching that because it all ties to the Defense Intelligence Agency. So that is, it's not a cover-up, at least not yet. It's just the DIA is sorely behind. So I have multiple FOIA requests in to try and get that contractual information, deliverables, reports, but sadly the backlog is so large, we have no idea how long it'll take. I mean, if it comes in tomorrow, I wouldn't be surprised. If it comes in 2027, I wouldn't be surprised either. So that's the bad thing. Let me throw out one other kind of red flag about all of this since we're on the topic, because this is something that is largely overlooked, but it needs to be dealt with. And this, to me, is one of the most fascinating aspects to Mr. Elizondo fielding public questions on the rare times that he has, and how it ties into the Freedom of Information Act. In one of the presentations that he gave, I believe that this was in the SCU, I believe it is, SCU conference. He was asked by a member of the audience, if we were to file FOIA requests for information on ATIP, where would we go? Right? That's a very logical question. Mr. Elizondo said, stick with the DIA. Now, I didn't know it at the time, even though that was a huge red flag for me, why he would potentially want you to stay away from the agency he actually worked in, which was OSD. That's the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And more specifically, OUSDI, which is the Office of the Under Secretary of Defense for Intelligence. If you're confused by all the acronyms, trust me, I get it. They are very, very confusing. But just know that OUSDI is where Mr. Elizondo worked and headed the ATIP program, according to his story, from 2010 through 2017. What's really weird is his television show changed the date to 2009. Now, you don't have to believe me that he gave that statement, although he did through his PR department back in early 2018. But if you don't believe me, which is fine, Wired magazine actually also got the exact same statement from TTSA saying he started in 2010. The television show changed it to 2009. That's actually important. So the 2010 to 2017, allegedly, he was in charge of ATIP at OSD, or more specifically OUSDI. What that means is that's not DIA, and what means is that 7-year period of videos that he collected, reports that he generated, photographs that he was able to get, emails, everything is under the cognizance of OSD for review and release under FOIA. That's 7 years of information, not DIA. And yet his answer was go to DIA. That's only 2 years of information on OSAP, which according to him was a completely different program. Also of which he said that he knew nothing about because he didn't work on it, right? What's wrong with that? Why would you not tell people to go to where you worked for 7 years worth of material? And why would you tell them to go to an agency that you yourself said, I really played no role in, meaning OSAP? That doesn't make any sense to me. Fast forward, like I don't know what the timestamp is, but maybe about a year later, when the Pentagon said he had no responsibilities on the program, and when the information started to come out via FOIA that he was talking about these 3 videos as being drones and balloons, who gave those documents out? OSD. That agency he didn't want you to go to. Now, is there malicious intent in that? I'll let you guys decide. But I'll say this. This is the right answer, in my opinion, but a better answer than saying one agency out of a couple that you can go to. The right answer is all the agencies. Under the FOIA, you would be surprised when you find documents at another agency that you never thought would be there, or documents that are at another agency. I'll give you a quick example. A FBI document could absolutely be at the National Archives. And when when you request somebody's FBI file from the FBI, but they transferred it to another agency, it will not come up as responsive. Another example would be the CIA might have a document from the NSA. They actually may even have the only copy. NSA lost theirs, destroyed theirs, or it was something they created and transferred over to the CIA for a specific program, whatever it may be. If you just file to the NSA, you'll never get that document. The right answer, do everything. Then it'll go over to the CIA, and then they will take that document and then forward it back to the NSA. That's what they called OPR, Office of Primary Responsibility. Another acronym that we learned about in the last couple of weeks here on this channel was OCA, or the Original Classifying Authority. Whoever creates the document has to review it for release. So going back to why this is such a bad situation, in my opinion, he was trying to take you away from the agency he worked at. Why? And that's a genuine question. Why would you tell a FOIA researcher, who wasn't me, by the way, excuse me. Why would you tell a FOIA researcher not to go to the one place that has responsibility for declassifying 7 years worth of your work? Why would you tell them to go to an agency that you didn't work at? And according to you, never worked on the program at all. That was why he said he never worked on OSAP. The last thing that I'll say that supports the government's side on this is the John McCain letter and the 38 DIRD reports, wherein it was asked for the reports created under the Advanced Aerospace Threat and Identification Program. A little bit of a variation of ATIP, but regardless, that's what was asked for. What then came back was a list of those 38 DIRD reports. All the ones that came out, right? So McCain asked for ATIP-related reports. The DIA sent them over a list of 38 reports. If you're not familiar with those reports are, I have more information than you'll ever want on what the reports are. I was able to get it through the Freedom of Information Act as well, because it did leak out from George Knapp, but that is an official release. So I've got all of those. What has leaked out are quite a few of the reports at this point. I think there's 5 of them. Each and every one of them mentions OSAP, not ATIP. In fact, there's not a mention of ATIP on the documents. What does that mean? It actually supports that they're the exact same thing. It supports Dr. Hal Puthoff, not Mr. Elizondo. And in fact, there was even another, this one was given to Roger Glazel, a Swedish blogger, who also I respect and someone you should look into if you're looking for blogs and stuff to follow. Roger got a small statement from Major Audricia Harris, who's now a lieutenant colonel, but at the time in early 2018 or mid-2018, I forget the exact timestamp, but regardless, after OSAP had kind of surfaced, Roger had asked, I'm paraphrasing, but what do we say? Do we say OSAP? Do we say ATIP? Are they the different, the same? And Major Harris said, just go ahead and stick with ATIP. They're the same. So Dr. Hal Puthoff, the Pentagon, and the documents all say that they're the exact same program. Mr. Elizondo, they're definitely different. He's the one that's in dispute. Pretty interesting when you start adding up all of those little pieces. That's what I mean. You need to build the foundation to believe in the grander picture. If your foundation is weak, it starts to crumble. And I think that that's what we're starting to see, sadly. I want to be wrong. Another text message come in of those photos. Yeah, permission granted to publish. Great. If you could go ahead and email, just because it'll probably be compressed on this. If you can email the originals, that would be fantastic. I am going to hit the chat room. Oh, actually, you know what? Still not done. Hopefully you guys are having fun. This is informative. I have no idea who's even watching anymore, you know? But thank you guys for tuning in. As we round down, I'll keep going here until I hear the door and my little guy may come in, say hi to us. This is something that I have a lot of fun doing, obviously on the public scale, but also for those who have decided to support the Black Vault and come in as a Patreon supporter. I really appreciate you doing that. There's a link down in the description if you decide to do that. The Patreon supporters wanted to have this public, and so that's why you're watching it now if you're not a Patreon supporter. But just know at least once a month, I do this privately with the Patreon supporters. Obviously a little bit more intimate and private and very much more one-on-one, just because there's not 12,000 supporters or anything. So if you're interested, I would appreciate it. You're going to be seeing the results of these Patreon supporters and what they're doing. We saw it today. If you missed the beginning of this particular live stream, I dropped a trailer for a brand new online series that I'll be doing on this very channel. So make sure that you... Is it on this side? This side? Who knows? There's a subscribe button somewhere down there. Who knows? Click on that subscribe button because there's very, very cool things coming, both short form and long form. Again, 2-3 minute stories and clips to 1 to 2 hour documentary type formats. Obviously, those are going to take a little bit longer, a little bit more money, but it's all free. Not a subscription site. This is not a pay site. Those who decide to support do so voluntarily. Everything that I get is still released for free, but the Patreon supporters get some pretty cool perks along the way, including what you're watching now, but privately for supporters only. But thank all of them. I know if you are in the room, thanks to all of them for saying, hey, let's do it public to get more audience interaction. So thank you to them and to all of those who decide to support it and support my work in the Black Vault. I really do appreciate that. This one came in from Twitter, Graham Walsh. Do you think the recent tribalism within the UFO community that has developed following the questionable quality of information released by TTSA is something that can be resolved? If so, how do you think things may play out? What has to happen? By who? How can it be facilitated? What might be the milestone? Okay. There's a lot there. In short, yes, there is a extreme divide on the within the UFO community that I've never seen in 23 years. I can't explain that. I've used a word now a few times. I'll use it again. This isn't true for any and all TTSA supporters, but it is true for some, that there is a cultish mentality that you are either with us or against us. I don't understand that at all. We're all on the same team. Everybody here in this room, I guarantee, doesn't agree with everything that I'm saying. But you're here, you're listening, you have an opportunity to call in, text in, because I don't hide behind my beliefs. I am always interested in reaching out and hearing what everyone else wants to say, think, believe, or offer, right? I don't hide from that at all. What I see with this divide is that there are some that are really seemingly on a pulpit, that they make it up as they go. That's, I feel, now proven. For a long time, I just thought it was carelessness. Now I do believe that there is an intent to spin a narrative. That all creates that divide and digs it even deeper in the sand. And I don't get it. I really don't. I've said it quite a few times. I'm a guy that really respects my friends, right? That's who I am personally. People in this field that I've respected in the past, I consider them friends, even though I may only see them once every 2 years at a conference or whatever. When I say that I've lost friends because I research TTSA and, bring up red flags or whatever, that means a lot to me on a personal level. And when I say means a lot, it hurts, right? I'm not trying to be sensitive here, but what I mean is that people are willing to throw away friendships because of their beliefs in TTSA. How dare you question Mr. Elizondo? Why? He's the one that told me to. How dare you go against TTSA? Why? They've been proven to show you a Mylar balloon and a CGI graphic as a real photo. Why wouldn't we question that? The truth will survive scrutiny. Going back to that person who told me that on Reddit. The truth will survive it. So we're on the same team. We're on the same level. We're on the same everything with the same objective. Or at least we should be. We should be seeking the truth together. There's a lot of people that I still consider friends that don't hate me for questioning TTSA, that welcome that research as I welcome theirs. I won't out anybody, but I know for a fact that there's a self-described, I'm not labeling them, as a TTSA supporter and investor that also supports my work through Patreon. I can't tell you how much that means to me because that person sees beyond that divide. And I can speak to them and they can speak to me, and we are friends at the end of the day, and we respect each other, and we don't agree. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. How do we get beyond it? I have no idea, but people need to be more open. I'll say it 1,000 times. You see the phone numbers on your screen. I am not afraid to field any question or criticism, respectfully that is, criticism on what I have brought forward, because I'm open to that other side. I don't feel that others are as open. And some people think I have a vendetta. Well, sorry, but to hit the truth, you need to go through some rough waters sometimes. You need to question. You need to ask questions, tough ones at that. Not softballs, but you need to ask tough questions. So I feel that I'm on the right track in regards to the truth. I have no problems If a document comes tomorrow and says the Pentagon was lying about Mr. Luis Elizondo and he headed ATIP for 7 years and all of his story is real, I'll bring that to you first. I got nothing against him. I've told him that privately. He doesn't believe me, obviously, because he won't respond to me anymore. But I got no problems with it. Others are so apprehensive to see evidence that may go against what they believe. This is the malicious intent that I feel is problematic for this field, in that in order to then solidify their belief, they will fabricate the story to make it true. That's a problem. I did it in my big presentation. I don't like talking bad about people. I really don't. Contrary to what you might think, seeing me, I'm no peach on Twitter all the time. I get that. But I only fire shots back at people who fire them at me first. And it doesn't make me feel good when people lie about me personally, which they've started to do. And I think that we're seeing it in the storytelling as well. So in that presentation, I went through some of the bloggers that are notorious for being the biggest fans of TTSA out there. And they take the evidence that may go against what they've thought or believed, and they'll twist it. And they'll literally change dates on emails, literally tell you something that isn't true, literally tell you a quote about something that is absolutely downright false. And all you got to do is fact check it to figure that part out. I'm telling you all of that because how do you fix it? We need to call those people out. I need to be called out and challenged. I got no problem with it. And so that, I believe, other people have to step up and they have to be open to other information, to other documents, to other pieces of evidence that may go against what they say or believe. We can't be afraid. And I think that that's what we're seeing with some in this community. They have dug that line in the sand that their friends be damned, the truth be damned. They want those clicks to their blog, or they want to sell their raffle tickets at their symposium, or whatever it may be. That may make people cringe that I'll say it like that, but you have to look at it. The biggest voices have the biggest benefit from all of this financially. You see it from journalists, you see them on television, and you see them selling tickets. And that's something that I think plays a role in this question, getting beyond it. Now, symposiums are fine. I love speaking at them. But you can't sacrifice your integrity and credibility in exchange to put something on a pedestal in order to sell those tickets. Yes, it might be popular, but I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm not here to be popular. I'm here to be accurate. And people rely on the Black Vault for me to bring them the truth, whatever it may be, or at least show you as much evidence as I can for you to formulate your own conclusions and your own beliefs. Others, I think, just make it up as they go, and you can prove that. And that's where I think that I went from thinking that it was carelessness to realizing I think there's something more here that is malicious, in the sense that they've dug that line in the sand and they can't be wrong anymore. If I'm proven wrong tomorrow morning, okay, great. If my questions that I've asked are answered, phenomenal. But I think that there are some out there that have dug their head in the sand and dug that line that divides the UFO community so deep, there's no coming back. I really don't believe that. And that's what's sad about that. So I'm going to hit some chat room questions here, because I think that's all of these. Graham, if you're in the room, I know you sent quite a few on Twitter. I'm going to see if I can get some chat questions here, and then I might come back to you. Hi, John. Have you ever looked into Ning Lee, her gravity research and DoD contract? No, offhand. I'm sorry, I don't have a better answer for you there. I know that there are some very cool patents and stuff like that out there. One in particular, I believe Tyler Rogaway at the Drive on the War Zone just covered in the last month or two. So I would definitely check out his work. He's another journalist that I respect, and he's been on the show. I would look into some of the stuff he's brought forward. Well, I see that question quite a bit here. If anybody else has, I'll start rounding third here. By all means, use that telephone number on the screen and feel free to call in. It looks like you guys are more comfortable with text because I got obliterated by those. Here's another one that I'll go ahead and pick. Feel free to, like I said, call in. If not, we'll round third and I'll wrap this up here. John, really appreciate your efforts. What are your thoughts about the Navy aviator witnesses, and have you ever had the opportunity to interview Tom Mahood of otherhand.org? Thanks. So in regards to Tom, no, I have not. So that may be, hey, I love these suggestions, so keep them coming. I will reach out to Tom. I'm not familiar really with background there, but I will reach out to him. Maybe he'll come on the show for an interview. The Navy aviator witnesses, this is something that I feel strongly about. Yeah, I believe that their stories are very, very powerful, very, very strong, and very, very important. I believe they're highly reputable. That doesn't mean that they're seeing aliens, but I do believe that their stories are worth something, that they should be heard. Sadly, I think that there's a misconception that if you talk bad about TTSA or question them, that the military just goes along with that. And how dare you, you're going against David Fravor and all the military witnesses from the Princeton and so on. I separate the two downright. I think it's sad. I don't want that connection between TTSA and the military men and women who have bravely come forward to tell their story. Is TTSA to thank for them coming forward? Possibly, and they deserve that credit. I've never hidden from that. But I say sadly because there's a lot of controversy now behind TTSA as time has gone on. There's a lot of questions that people are asking, even away from the Mr. Elizondo thing. This goes to the metamaterials claims that they're making, the, hey, invest in this, send us money. If you doubt me, look on social media and look at the comments, especially on Tom DeLonge's page. And I'm not trying to laugh about it or make a joke, but I think that people have to look at that and realize that is how the public is seeing this. It's becoming a joke. I'm not saying it's a joke per se, but we have to start considering that this has gone on now long enough. We're approaching the 2-year mark since TTSA has come about. They're doing a second round of funding. We've gotten a History Channel show, and their SEC filings indicate that they're more interested in entertainment now than the aerospace aspect that they were originally putting at the top of their list. And what I mean by that is they're switching the order of what TTSA does and what they're focusing on. I think that there's something to be told by that. So I don't know what is next for all of this. I really don't. What I can say strongly is that I don't want to connect TTSA and the military witnesses. And I hope that the military witnesses, albeit that TTSA may be to thanks for them coming forward, I hope that they don't exclusively align themselves with TTSA either. That I think that that controversy may bleed over and may ultimately harm the story more than help it. Now, I'll say it again, because I know I'm going to get attacked for this by some out there. I really do think that they should be thanked. TTSA should be thanked for, if they are responsible for bringing out these men and women, for doing that. But I think in the same respect, they have to acknowledge that controversy that may spill over onto these men and women that have bravely come forward. So I hope we separate the two and understand the difference between the two and how important those military men and women really are. Gary, I know that you are on hold. Thank you for calling in. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Hey, thank you for taking my phone call. I was making a futile attempt to type in some things on your chat there, and it didn't come out very well. My thumbs are too big, and I apologize for that.
I have that problem all the time. No worries. But I'm glad you called in. I've been trying to watch the chat anyway. It's very, very difficult. But what can I do for you?
Well, I was the one that was commenting about FOIA requests about Christine Marcy, Field McConnell's sister. And, I don't know exactly. I can't pinpoint exactly what to FOIA, but he makes some claims, and he's been making some accusations about her being involved in some very, very dark stuff over the years and committing some pretty high crimes. And then just today, I came across something on Jason Goodman's channel about Christine Marcy's daughter being what they call a Mendenhall baby. And I'd never heard that term. And then once I started looking into it, it just really blew me away.
Interesting.
I don't know if have you ever heard of that term, Mendenhall baby?
No, not off the top of my head anyway.
Okay, well, I just learned about it today, but I've been hearing about Christine Marcy for years from Field McConnell. And I'm pretty sure you probably know who Field McConnell is. You may have even had him on your show. I don't know.
I have not had him on our on the show. No.
Okay. Well, he has he's a colorful. He has a colorful background. He's a colorful person. I would sort of kind of point you in the direction to maybe look at what he has to say a little bit, and what his sister Christine Marcy has, and what he's claiming she's done over the years. And he said that she's deeply embedded with the elite, and she is, responsible for a lot of things that's gone on in America. So I just kind of want to leave it at that.
I mean, any contact form on theblackvault.com comes directly to me. I'm the only one that runs it. Feel free to drop me a line. I mean, I'm curious. I don't know much about the names that you're referencing. You were talking about you're not sure how to FOIA. I'd be more than happy to, try and help you out and point you to the right direction on what you might be able to do and what angles you can take and, go from there. But definitely write me, because those names I'm not real familiar with, nor that term that you had mentioned. So, yeah, definitely drop me a line. I'd be more than happy to help.
Okay, yeah, thank you. And that Jason Goodman YouTube just came out today, by the way.
Okay.
I'm not promoting his channel at all. I mean, I watched his stuff, and I like the guy, I admire him.
No,
but this just really kind of blew me out of the water.
That's cool. I don't mind, even if you were trying to plug them. I'll definitely check it out. I appreciate it.
Okay, hey, thank you. Thanks for taking my call, and hey, keep up the good work, and thank you for all you do, man.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. Definitely keep in touch.
Okay, have a good day. I'll send some stuff over. Bye-bye.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you. All right, so that's cool. I love these questions, because a lot of times I get put into names and angles that I've not been made aware of yet. So that's awesome. I'm kind of seeing not too many questions. If you do have any, feel free to put them all in caps in the chat room. Let me go ahead and see if there's any more text messages that came in, because I think I dealt with all of them. If there are any last questions, put them all in caps in the chat. Graham Walsh, if you're in the room, I'll go ahead and get back to one of yours, and then we'll go ahead and wrap this up. Do you think that there was any coordination following the launch of TTSA and the timing of Jeremy Corbell's retelling of the stories about Skinwalker Ranch and Bob Lazar? If so, for what possible purpose? I really don't know. I mean, I don't want to say anything bad about Jeremy Corbell. I've had him on the show a couple of times talking about those documentaries. I always recommend people to watch them, regardless of if you believe in the Bob Lazar or Skinwalker Ranch stories, simply because it's a way to get in touch with what that information is that's out there, and he obviously put in a lot of time and effort telling the story. Is there a connection between TTSA and that? I don't know. What bothers me about Skinwalker Ranch and the overall ATIP story, drawing that line, is the insertion of the Skinwalker Ranch in OSAP/ATIP. That there is a story that Bigelow based his ATIP/OSAP, whatever it is, operation out of Skinwalker Ranch. I don't know if that's ever been officially put on the record by anybody, but I went to the Defense Intelligence Agency and specifically asked about the OSAP program operating with boots on the ground on a ranch in Utah. And I laughed, because none of that has anything to do with what the Defense Intelligence Agency would take part in or essentially sponsor, so to speak. Now, this was a government contractor, so there may be some leeway there. But then when you look at the official bid solicitation, which even as I speak today, on September 6, 2019, you can still get it. It's on a public government server that stretches back all the way well before 2008. But the bid solicitation was available on the server and still is today. When you research that and look at it and read it on what BAASS, the sole bidder, BAASS tried to get and won, it would never, you can't draw the line between what the government purchased as a contractor and what their mission was to Skinwalker Ranch. You can't draw the line. It doesn't make any sense. So I asked the DIA for an official response, and they said that they had absolutely no information on any ranch in Utah. The problem also with it is the DIA is considered a military branch. What I don't know the legalities behind, and I think that this is a gray area, is the DIA cannot do boots on the ground on U.S. soil. However, I'm not sure if a contractor can without repercussion. But regardless of all that, it does not fit into the bid, the contract that BAASS won. So it just didn't make sense. DIA denied having anything on it. Whether or not documentation comes out to prove it, I'm not really sure. Back to this question, that's what I kind of question. Why try and bring up Skinwalker Ranch in connection with this OSAP program that was talking about aerial threats 40 years in the future? Because I will say this, if Skinwalker Ranch in Utah played a role in that type of a program, and there were enemy threats flying above that exhibited technology more than 40 years in the future, that's a problem. And I think that's something the military would take very, very seriously if they were seeing that type of a phenomena, not a UFO, UAP, but that type of a threat on a ranch in Utah. They wouldn't, let that one go. So none of that really makes sense to me. And then, of course, you have that documentary come out. And then all of a sudden you have Bob Lazar thereafter. Do I find a connection with TTSA? No. But what I will say is the last thing those brave men and women who have come forward need is Bob Lazar attaching himself to the story. I saw that they tried to connect I think it was the Tic Tac or maybe a gimbal. I forget which one. It was just ludicrous to me that Bob Lazar was trying to connect that to the sports model disc that he saw decades ago. To me, that's an effort to try and inject himself into the present day story, which obviously translates into more views for the documentary. I'm sorry to say it that way. I hope for the sake of the men and women of the military, Bob Lazar stays as far away as he can from those stories because they deserve a heck of a lot better. Let me get to a phone call here in my hometown, somewhere in Los Angeles. Who's this?
Hello, Mr. Greenewald. This is Alex from Santa Barbara.
Hello, Alex from Santa Barbara. How are you?
Great. I was hoping to ask you a question regarding the Wilson leaks. Sure.
Hopefully I can answer, but I'll try.
Well, from every researcher that spoke about this on any platform, not one of them really mentions Bob Beckwith or Robert W. Beckwith of Beckwith Electric. He has written 2 books, 2 of which are in private libraries in Florida and Virginia regarding neutrino technology, quite a few patents. Do you have any information regarding this man?
No, but I'm glad you called in because that's another name that I'd be more than happy to look into. Off the top of my head anyway, I don't believe so. So I'm making notes here of some people to look into, and I'll look into that. But yeah, off the top of my head, no, I wouldn't have any information on that.
Oh, well, please do. That'd be quite an interesting topic. He has 2 written books that have some really interesting insights. Some of his technology may have been referenced by Corso Jr. and Dr. Greer, without mentioning his actual name, regarding neutrino detecting technology that went to the National Reconnaissance Office.
Interesting. Okay.
So anyway, thank you very much.
No, thank you. I appreciate it. I'll definitely look into that Bob Beckwith, of course. Thank you. All right. I see a lot of messages in there. So the 5D Raver, everything you're typing is caps, so it's going to be really hard for me to figure out what questions you're asking. So if you do have a question, feel free to do it in all caps. If you don't, though, if you could type regular, that'd be awesome. Jeffries 1, John, have you researched Setti Ranch? What do you think? So Jeffries, I met James Gilliland many, many years ago, and I got to spend time on the Setti Ranch. In fact, he had a conference. I forget how long ago it was. It has to be 10 plus years. And I remember that I got to, I was hosting a radio show actually with Dr. Roger Lear at the time. And he and I both went up there to speak at James Gilliland's conference that he had. And it was a lot of fun, man. I'm here to tell you, like, away from the UFO thing, James's ranch is so beautiful. And I remember getting there. It's a lot different than, speaking at a Hilton or Sheraton or, whatever conference, is located more in a city setting. But this was just out there. And I remember getting there like, oh, this might be a little bit different. And then I realized how beautiful it was and how amazing it was to be there. So that in itself was a great experience. I won't say that I saw any UFO sighting because I didn't. I didn't see anything strange. But I can see why people would see it in an area like that. I mean, it is pitch black dark. There is like no lights around. And so that in itself was just amazing to see. I do recall off the top of my head some satellites up there, but nothing like James has posted, in the past, and a lot of people have seen. So I think that there's something going on up there. I don't know what it is. I've never researched it per se, other than I thought I'd share my personal experience with you, that was an amazing place to go. And so if you're into that and love camping and love the outdoors, if you have an opportunity to go up there and visit, I would definitely take it, because it to someone like me who's born and raised in Los Angeles, I'm really glad that I was able to go up there. I wish I would have saw something. I didn't, but that's okay. Just because from a outdoors experience, it was a lot of fun. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name. Bootube? John, what's your take on TTS wanting to create the Vault, their own database? Well, yeah, I guess, good for them. For those who don't know, the TTSA created what they called a community of interest, which is really weird because that was the same terminology that appeared in Mr. Elizondo's emails. And so they changed the name. I don't know if there's any connection to it, obviously now coming out that that's what Mr. Elizondo was talking about, what he wanted to do within the military. They've changed it to the Vault. Obviously, I've been known to be a little bit negative against TTSA and their entire storylines. So for them to kind of change it and echo very closely to the Black Vault, including it being in the same niche, I have a massive database of thousands of UFO and related case files, not even government documents. If you're not aware, I have a whole database that stretches back decades and decades of UFO sightings. I've run it for quite a few years. That you can actually, let's see if I can bring it up real quick, but you can kind of see exactly. Let me pull it up. Hold on. Sorry. So I had to do it on the fly there, but this is the case file database, and the thousands of cases that I have in the database are all linked up to this map, and you can actually zoom in, figure out your area, go in, different icons differentiate different case files, and so on and so forth. So for them to do a UFO related database and call it the Vault, whatever. I don't have a copyright on the on the word Vault, or a trademark, so I'm not going to create a big stink. But come on, that's a little silly. They could have thought of something very much more interesting and unique, especially for an entertainment company that's trying to do original programming. So I don't know how to address it other than, you know what, I guess if they want to try and mimic what's been around for 23 years, if that's the intent, go ahead. I have no problem with that. I'm flattered, but I'm proud of what the Black Vault has become after 23 years, and I don't think if they are trying to mimic it, that it will last very long. I think they should have done something else. I made a joke, actually, when I saw the press release that I was going to start my own effort called Beyond the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, and my tagline was going to be, I don't just take you to the stars, I take you beyond them. And I tagged Tom DeLonge. I'm like, you're cool with this, right? Of course, he didn't respond to me, but it's the same kind of thing. I mean, it's like, okay, I can use those plain English words, but you've kind of established your brand, TTSA, as I have established mine, as MUFON has established theirs, as so many organizations have established their own name. So to kind of mimic that, I felt was a little bit silly. Okay, I'm still okay. So it's the chat rooms are kind of hard to follow there because I see a lot that are all in caps. So tell you what, it is 5:45. I said we were going to go till 5. I appreciate all of you still being in the room. Obviously, there's lots of stuff to talk about. Obviously, the UFO topic is incredibly popular. So is TTSA. Here are some of my closing words to you. If you have not already, please, 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 somewhere down there is a subscribe button. Please, please subscribe to the channel. That will alert you to more of these types of live streams. But also it helps me just spread awareness about the channel. If you feel so inclined, definitely check out the new trailer I dropped today for those video formats that are going to be coming to this channel. That is a representation of the very short time that I have had the Patreon campaign going. Everything that I have will remain free. This isn't going to turn into a pay channel. But for those who do decide to come aboard and do decide to support the Black Vault, that Patreon page is more helpful than I can ever explain. And in the coming weeks and months, you will definitely see even more of the results of that. So if you do feel so inclined, there's a link down there in the description. It's patreon.com/theblackvault. That will take you to all the different levels. It starts at $1, and yes, that $1 level is incredibly helpful as well. And some of them come with some pretty cool perks unique to that only. If not, don't worry. Subscribe anyway. It's all free. Theblackvault.com will remain free as well. So I really do appreciate all of your support. I'll do this more often as well. There's a lot of live streams coming, and that news that I teased about the updates on the videos, that is definitely coming. So hopefully that will come early next week, but I will keep you guys informed. When I have an answer, I'll definitely bring it to you. So thank you all to the chat room. Thank you to everybody watching on the recorded feed as well. And for those, I'll see if maybe we should dump this to a podcast. That way you guys can listen to it as well, even though we had some visuals. So all of that being said, thank you so much again. This is John Greenewald Jr. signing off. We'll see you next time.